So today I'm going to create a negative mold for my mouse nose. I've created a wall with clay around the edge so that I can build up my negative mold over it. On the sculpt here you can see I've created this, the white clay is basically our wall, and I've created a cutting edge around the whole outside of the prosthetic, and that's going to create an edge that will help to pull away any excess gelatin from the prosthetic. It'll help cut the prosthetic away from the excess gelatin. I've also created keys at the top, and that helps the negative mold fit together into the positive mold better. The walls along the edge are to help retain the UltraCal 30 once I start pouring the soft liquid plaster in. And I've also created, or I've actually sprayed the whole surface with crystal clear, which is a clear spray paint. That's going to help to release the clay out of the mold once I'm finished. The next step is to mix up your UltraCal, and what I did was I added the water to the bowl first, and then I sifted in the UltraCal in there, and once the plaster starts to absorb the water, you can see it looks kind of like a dry, cracked lake bed. Then you can start to incorporate the plaster with the water. You want to mix it in so it's not chunky. I've kind of estimated how much I need. I'm not sure exactly how much I put in. I think I started with about 2.5 to 3 cups of water. And you usually need more cups of the plaster than you do of the water. Okay, so once that's mixed in, I'm going to turn this sideways. You're going to create a splash coat on the surface of your clay. So hopefully that crystal clear that you painted on, or you spray painted on, was thick enough. I did 2 coats. And this splash coat is to help get all the details of your sculpt in there. If you don't do the splash coat, then you might miss some of it. You might get some holes, or maybe just the texture that you've added to your sculpt won't appear. I'm going to go ahead and put this all over the surface, get any holes, make sure the clay fills in, or the plaster fills in the clay. And you want to start, as you get all of the nooks and crannies filled in, you're going to want to start to kind of build up the plaster as well. So this is a kind of a thick splash coat. I maybe add a little more plaster than I needed, but it helps the process go a little faster, so I don't mind. And then as you're working, the plaster will start to get a little thicker. And you can start to maybe build it up a little more with your hands. You can see it's holding its shape really well, so it's already getting a little thicker. And you also want to make sure that there aren't any air bubbles. So by kind of going over the surface, you pop some of those air bubbles as you work. I'm gonna let this set up a little bit, and then I'll as it starts to harden, I can start to build it up. So it's starting to thicken up a bit. It's still pretty movable, but what I've done is I've dipped a couple pieces of burlap. So I've got the burlap here. I've dipped them in the plaster, and I'm going to lay them on the surface really carefully. I want to make sure there's still plaster between them. I don't want to get the burlap to touch the clay. I want to kind of press that in, and this is going to give it a little more strength. I want to make sure there's no air bubbles underneath it either. It's a little tricky to put in. Sometimes you can push too hard and then it'll show through to the outside, which you don't want. So I'm going to just very carefully layer it on top here. Like I said, that's going to give it a little more stability. And I think I can start scooping a little more of the plaster on top now. So I want to make sure that the nose, which is the high point, is definitely covered. Getting to the end of my plaster here, I might need to make a little more ultracal. Because it's not quite as thick as I want it to be. It's not as thick of a wall. Maybe another cup. So close. But you can see it's starting to take shape now. I'm just now getting this last little coat on. This is that last thicker coat to just make the negative mold thick enough. You can see it's going on pretty nicely, and I'm able to kind of sculpt it into place, smooth it out, make sure it's thick where it needs to be, which is mostly the nose. You gotta make sure it gets the thickest at the center. And you'll notice as it starts to kind of harden, see how it's holding its shape? It's kind of like a really thick frosting. As it starts to harden, I can take a little water and smooth it out to give the surface a nice smooth finish texture. And you want to make sure the edges, like where the clay meets the plaster, you don't want the plaster to hang over, because then it'll create a kind of rough, sharp edge that has a lip, and we want it to finish nice and smooth right where the clay is. So right now, basically, I'm just finessing the outside, the outer shape of this negative mold. And it's just at the point, I think, where I can start to add a little bit of water to smooth it out. It's getting kind of crumbly. So I think I actually want to take off my glove and start working that. Got my pitcher. And I just put a little water in my hand, and it just smooths it out. I don't know if you can see that, but it just kind of makes it a little more glossy. I don't have to do much to it. I just can kind of put a little bit of water on the surface. And then you can kind of shape it. And I'm being really delicate. I'm just kind of lightly touching it so that it don't disturb the plaster. And then basically just let it sit and dry. And then, of course, the best part is the demolding part, where you can take the clay off and pull your newly made mold out. I don't know how easy this is going to be, but we'll see. The clay's coming off nice, which is good. I say that, and then it doesn't work. No. So then I'm going to try to carefully pry this out. And there you go. I've got my negative and my positive. Voila.